I love this quote by Thomas Jefferson. He said, "I'm a great believer in luck, and I find that the harder I work, the more luck I have." This is just a great frame for the thing we're talking about today, which is sort of self-esteem, self-confidence, whatever it is you want to call it. And with us today, of course, is the cheeky scientist who we love having on the show. Welcome back to Smart Life, Isaiah Hankel.
Thanks, Dr. Gina. Good to be back.
Now, I am told by our producers that you might have had a Guinness just prior to this interview today, because you are where?
In Ireland, yeah. Just one, though, I promise.
That's no problem at all. Loosen you up and make your brain even more flexible. I'm glad you're with us today, because this topic is something that has long been on my last nerve. And I think social experiments with our children in our schools that are government imposed, like that of the self-esteem movement, are evidence to have really caused actual harm. Not only did they not help, they've caused harm. And you've written about this, and you said that there are lots of ways to destroy your self-esteem with sort of other fictitious thoughts that we've been sort of programmed to believe. And one of those is just being nice all the time. You say that might not be such a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been quite a few studies that have come out recently that have shown that there's a strong negative relationship between agreeableness and, for example, earning. So in other words, the more agreeable someone is, the less money they're likely to make. And that's just on the financial side. But there's this idea that if we're just nice and we're kind of a pushover and you get along with everyone, that's somehow kind of the pinnacle of what we want to achieve. But it can actually slowly reduce your self-esteem because you're not standing up for anything. You don't have a sense of self or a strong identity in that case, and that leads to having lower self-esteem.
One of the things that the self-esteem movement has taught our school children, and apparently millennials are the worst about this, and especially female millennials, is that someone else's winning necessarily names you a loser, that someone else's success makes you not successful, and that because of that sort of false impression that children have come to learn, they compare themselves way more, and as a result, their confidence is way lower, because if you're always comparing yourself to someone else, then you're always going to find someone that you come up short to. And so this has caused a lot of strife in the workplace. Corrosion is the way the doctor in Psychology Today referred to it. And you named something else. You say that the advent of reality television, these perfect people with these perfect bodies that are airbrushed, and in all the ways that we turn on our televisions to watch other people's success, even people like Honey Boo Boo, who in any other circumstance would not be successful, but here she is, a cajillionaire, and you got little girls comparing themselves to her. What is this doing to the next generation? And better yet, how can we stop it?
That's a great question. Yeah, and what you're referring to is there's a survey of 19,000 people that found that people who watch reality TV shows are more neurotic and have lower self-esteem. And I think it's in part because of this encouragement to compare yourself to other people. But I think a better strategy is to compare yourself to a former version of yourself. If you're competing with yourself, you're always going to get better, and you're going to rely on yourself to make those advancements, to be more successful or to grow. And that's the point, not to try to emulate something that you're seeing on TV, for example. And so I think if you focus on yourself and improving your current position instead of trying to match somebody else's position, it'll help you focus on growth versus image.
Yeah, and I think that's really important too. And in fact, the doctor in the Psychology Today, Satoic, I believe is his last name, that's it, he said that really self-confidence is an inside game. It's something where you are comparing you to yourself, as you said, maybe you to yourself 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's about learning to build on your own successes, and it's also not about being challenged necessarily by other people's goals, but being challenged by your own personal goals. But there are small steps, Dr. Hankel, that you talk about in your article. Some of those are just simple things that we can do every day, like eating well, like working out. But what are some of the other simple steps we can take so that we are only continuing to build on our own accomplishments and not getting dependent on comparing ourselves to other people or jealousies?
Well, one key I would say is chasing the right things. So people who chase the wrong things, they're the ones that get into trouble, and they're the ones that end up hurting themselves. These are people that chase material items over experiences. So I talk about a study that shows that people who spend money on experiences versus new objects or material items all the time are actually happier and have higher self-esteem. People who chase others, who try to get other people to like them, and are constantly, whether it's sucking up at work or staying in a relationship that's not good for them just because they want everybody to like them, they have lower self-esteem. And people who chase praise in general, whose happiness relies on somebody else giving them approval, also have low self-esteem. So I would say it's chasing the right things and not the wrong things.
And so as we're chasing these right things, and we're careful now not to backtrack, to not be constantly comparing, to be comparing ourselves only to ourselves, to cut down on the amount of, I would just say, media time at all, which of course is kind of ironic for me to be a person in media saying that, but things like reality TV, even social media time can be one of those things where we start sort of comparing ourselves maybe to the advertisements, maybe, this is the other thing. People are likely to post on social media either the really horrible whiny posts, which I have done, or the great successes. But they don't tend to post the mundane, let's see, I changed the cat box, I did my laundry, and I changed a few diapers today. That's not the stuff they're posting on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Thank God, we don't really want to see that. But because of that, people's lives tend to reflect only the really high highs and the really low lows, and it's not an accurate portrayal of a normal life, even for the best lives, is it?
I absolutely agree. And I read an article recently that defined what you're talking about, and hopefully I can say this on here, as outrage porn. Basically, only things that people are outraged about get posted on Facebook because we all want engagement. We want a reaction. And so we're trying to be something that we're really not. We don't, like you said, we ignore the routine things, and instead we post things that are just outrageous, things that really get us fired up. And if there isn't something to get outraged over, people start inventing things, and that's what can cause trouble. That's what can cause people to get addicted to social media and addicted to trying to get other people's attention when they really don't have anything to say. And this kind of behavior has been shown through other studies to lead to narcissism and low self-esteem. When people actually getting addicted to social media, and that addiction affecting their lives, even giving them a poor body image or self-image, like you said.
And it's interesting that you use the word narcissism and low self-esteem or low self-confidence in the same sentence, because I don't think a lot of people realize that that's actually a big part of narcissism. Now, there's a difference between sociopathology or something like that and narcissism. Narcissism is just the inability that grows on its own sort of cancer to think outside of self, to be completely so into yourself that you lose the ability to empathize and relate to other people and to be compassionate, frankly. And I think it's interesting that you use those two things together. The other thing that I think is really interesting about all of this is not only is it destructive to receive false compliments, but according to your, I guess, meta-analysis of the research, you say that when we give inauthentic compliments, when we laugh, for example, at our boss's joke just because we're trying to brown nose the boss or those sorts of things, that every time we do that every time we're inauthentic like that, it actually reduces our self-confidence even more.
Absolutely. And I think that authenticity, vulnerability, these things are important because it helps you, it strengthens your identity, it strengthens your integrity. And when you kind of fake it, or you're always trying to please other people or please everyone, whether that's through, like you said, brown nosing or laughing at your boss's jokes, or maybe just putting up with something when you shouldn't, when you should really stand up for yourself, that's when you start to lose your sense of self. That's when you start to lower your self-esteem. And a lot of people worry about, just being nice. That's the reason that I decided to go with that for the article title, Always Being Nice, and Other Ways to Destroy Your Self-Esteem, because it's really encouraged to always to turn the other cheek and to be nice. But in fact, a lot of studies have shown that standing up for yourself and even being a little bit ornery, I want to say, can be more beneficial for you, both career-wise and both in your personal life.
And I love the story you told about that in your post where you said you fired back. Your professor was calling you a moron, among other words that I remember, and you fired back and said dumb dumb. And I just thought, Dr. Hankel, oh my gosh, that's like your what's his name, Flanders on Simpsons moment there. Dumb dumb is not that mean, but it worked, and he stopped calling you moron. And I thought that was brilliant. So sometimes being a little snarky, being a little cheeky, if I may, is the answer. Dr. Hankel, always here with the answers for us. Thanks for being with us. Stay safe on your travels, my friend.
Thanks, Dr. Gina.
All right.